All right, guys, Worlds is coming close. We actually have it on the 13th of July. I will be streaming the World Championship. This has been a year of Tengu Plant tournaments built up for this very event, and I'm very excited to kind of see what unfolds and what happens. But since it's been a year of tournaments, I wanted to do a year in review, so to speak. I wanted to talk about the players that have qualified, so if you're not playing in the tournament, you at least maybe have someone to root for or look out for in this event, right? So I want to cover all of the players that have qualified for Worlds and talk about the deck they played, and then even kind of do a breakdown of statistics of what decks actually qualified for Worlds versus what decks didn't, right? So we can kind of take a look. So we're just going to hop right into it. I just want to talk about all the players that qualified and what they qualified with. So we'll just read off the list right here. We got Alex Lennon, who ended up qualifying with TG. I believe they were playing a TG, not like stun, but TG with like tour guides, like a chaos TG type build, which was pretty unique. And also, I believe Alex Lennon is the only player to have topped with TG, which is really cool to see. Then we had Alu Kazi, I don't know, I'll put it up, the name will be up here, who ended up topping with Crusher Control, also the only player to top with Crusher Control, which was crazy to see. Amazing Mike Man, who ended up qualifying with Jurak, and also the only player to qualify with Jurak, which was really cool. Amazing Mike Man's the notorious Jurak player. I'm hoping he'll bust it out for Worlds, but he's also been cooking a lot of different lists, like around Naturia stun, stuff like that. So I'd be interested to see in what Amazing Mike Man is going to bring to the table for Worlds. We had Bad Culture Fit, who ended up qualifying with Cat Sith Chaos. We had Best Yu-Gi-Oh! Player NA, who qualified with Agents. Rahim Poke, who qualified with Hero Beat, and I believe is kind of a notorious Hero player, so I wouldn't be surprised if they brought Hero to Worlds as well. We had Jin, who topped with Tengu Plant. Gwari, who ended up qualifying with Gravekeepers. I believe they ended up winning the event, or yeah, Gwari won my event with Gravekeepers. We had Halfar, who qualified with Hero Beat. Hats and Houses being the only player to qualify with Karakuri. We have Himne, who qualified with Agents, but is notoriously famous for playing things like Falcon Punch or even Gravekeepers, so who knows what Himne will actually bring to the tournament. We have Jaxwarn, who qualified with Cat Sith Chaos. We have Jaden Yuki, who qualified with Tengu Plant, and I believe they won 2 events this year, or maybe just 2 Tengu Manias in general, but I know they've won with Tengu Plants twice now, which is pretty impressive. We have Janky, who qualified with Cat Sith Chaos. We had Lamb, which if you haven't seen my recent video where we go through the tournament run with Lamb, who ended up qualifying with Pure Fabled, which was really cool to see. We had Luigi Kira Alici, who qualified with Agents. We had Pillage, who qualified with Chaos Stun, so it was more of like a Chaos Control type build, so like Thunder King deck, very small monster count, heavy traps, protect the Thunder King was basically how that deck functioned. We had Necro, who qualified with Zombies, and is like notoriously like probably like the only zombie player, but also probably the best zombie player that this format has. So I'm really hoping Necro brings zombies to Worlds. I think that would be really cool to see. That's Necro's pet deck, and I want to see how far zombies can go at Worlds. I think that would be sick. We have Richard, who qualified with Cat Sith Nordic, and Richard in general plays a lot with Nordic in multiple different ways and strategies. The Cat Sith Nordic was a really interesting approach. I'm not sure if Richard will bring that back, but I do expect Richard to play something around Nordic just because that is, again, like the pet deck for Richard as well. Winning ended up topping with Gladiator Beasts. It was like a Iatos D-Fissure Gladiator Beast deck, which was kind of cool to see. So I'm interested to see if Gwinning will bust out the Gladiator Beast for Worlds. With big money on the line, I would expect them not to, but you never know. Raikoko, who ended up qualifying with Agents. We had Saikon being the only player to qualify with Dragoonity. Saikon really started pioneering Dragoonity, so I would hope Saikon plays Dragoonity. I think that'd be cool to see, but who knows what Saikon will end up playing. I know Saikon plays a lot of different decks. Samu Pasteno, who ended up topping with Hero Beat. And then we had Shamu, who topped with their own homebrew of Cat Sith Plants. So it's kind of like Tengu Plants with a little Cat Sith engine. it was a pretty unique build. Not sure if they'll bring that back or if they'll do something different. We had Shinuslaw, who ended up qualifying with Gravekeepers, but Shinuslaw is a notorious TG stun player, and I wouldn't be surprised if for World Shinuslaw busted that one out. We have Tegalik, who topped with Cat Sith Chaos. And then lastly, we had Yavion, who ended up being the only player to top with Mist Valley. And it was pure Mist Valley, which was pretty cool to see. So it seems like they're no longer in the server, and so I'm not sure if we'll see them back. Same thing with Janky is no longer in the server, so I don't know if they'll actually be competing in Worlds. So while we have 27 people who qualified, there are 2 players that are kind of missing. So, you know, they may or may not be competing. Maybe they'll show back up. I don't know. But it would be really cool to see pure Mist Valley back in the pool, especially because if I remember right, watching Yavion play those matches, the deck was really cool. Had some insane combos. I believe we caught him on stream. So yeah, I'd be excited to see what happens. But these are our 27 qualifiers for Worlds. These are the players you can expect to see. There's a lot of really good players, a lot of players I'm not super familiar with, a lot of players I am familiar with. And so, you know, maybe you know some of them, maybe you're rooting for somebody, but I wanted to put this out, and now we're going to kind of hop in and kind of look at the different decks that ended up qualifying as a whole. We'll put it down on a list so you guys can kind of see just exactly what the statistics were for Worlds this year. All right, so out of all the 27 players who qualified, we saw 16 vastly unique decks make it into Worlds, which is really cool to see because it shows that the format is still very diverse and there's a lot of different options to play. One thing that I found very surprising out of this is the decks that repeated themselves or saw multiple people qualify with that specific deck. The 2 decks that were leading were Agents, which I wasn't too surprised about. Again, it's kind of one of the most represented decks in the format. You see a lot of Agents lists in just about every tournament. And then Cat Sith Chaos was actually our next deck that qualified the most. Both of those decks topped with 4 players topping with those decks. And then Hero saw 3 players, and Tengu Plant only saw 2, which was actually really surprising that only 2 people actually qualified with Tengu Plants themselves. Knowing that people very often regard Tengu Plant as like the best deck in the format, seeing it only get 2 when it was very heavily represented is kind of an interesting thing to look at. We also saw 2 Gravekeeper players make it into or qualify for Worlds with Gravekeepers. I'm not surprised about that. I honestly thought there would be more, but there really weren't a lot of Gravekeeper players throughout Worlds. I'm curious if we'll see more going into the actual tournament of Worlds, because if people start going like really try hard, you might see more Agents, which then means Gravekeepers goes up in value. So I'd be curious to see what direction people go, because Gravekeepers have a very solid matchup versus the likes of Agents. That also could increase the value of TG Stun because it has a pretty good matchup into Gravekeepers itself. So just some things to think about there. Another thing to mention is Cat Sith was like pure Cat Sith Chaos was like, you know, at the top. But there also were a lot of other Cat Sith lists that kind of made it through, like Cat Sith Plants, Cat Sith Nordic. So I don't know. I mean, those 2 other decks are like different than standard Cat Sith Chaos, which is why they're separate. But there technically were 6 total Cat Sith type decks that were played to qualify. So that's something interesting. I find it really cool because like historically Cat Sith decks were not a thing, and you know, this year they started kind of blowing up and popping off, and a lot of people are messing with the engine. So it's pretty cool to see that Cat Sith has kind of risen to be like clearly one of the top decks in Tengu Plant format, just given the fact that, you know, it's seen a lot of tops, and again, it's not a historical deck. So I think that's cool to see. We're seeing, you know, development throughout the format. We're seeing new decks pop up, and I like seeing that. Some of the most interesting decks I think that are on this list that we can talk about were Mist Valley, pure Mist Valley, Crusher Control, and even Fabled. Pure Fabled making it through is really cool. Some things that are kind of sad, we didn't see any Infernity, we didn't see any X-Sabers make it through. No Piper Chaos either, although I will say, I think, I could be wrong on this, but I believe Halfar already qualified with Hero Beat and then technically placed in the top cut of a tournament with Piper Chaos, but since invites passed down, that would mean that, you know, he technically qualified with Piper Chaos as well. I could be wrong. So Halfar, if you're watching this, you can let me know in the comments. But technically Piper Chaos did make it through. It just wasn't fully there. Like it's not technically counted because it wasn't like it wasn't the actual official deck qualified with. And that may have occurred for some other players as well with like decks they decided to play and stuff like that. So pretty interesting to see. But yeah, that's kind of the statistics for what this year of Tengu Plant play has looked like. I'm really curious to see what this list condenses down to for Worlds. Again, I think people will go very try hard. I really hope to see people experiment, or ideally, I'm assuming there are players that have been holding on to lists that they think are absolutely broken, and now that like there's bigger money on the line, this is where they're gonna bust it out. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully this video gives you guys an idea of the type of players we have here at Worlds. Hopefully there's someone you guys can root for. I want you guys to let me know in the comments who you're rooting for, you know, who you want to see make it through and what you want to see him make it through with. You know, I personally want to see Lamb play that Fabled list again. I don't know if he will, but Lamb, you should play Fabled. That'd be cool to see. I think it'd be fun to watch, and I know a lot of other people would be excited about it. But I think for the most part, guys, that is going to wrap it up for today's video. So we are just going to give a quick shout out to my patrons. So shout out to Wabi Adam, Eric Gagnon, Hobanite, My Dude, Photo Shooty, Brian Ford, and Sven Olbrehen. Thank you guys so much for the support. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and have a great time doing it.